2023 when I was diagnosed with early stages of coronary artery disease. And that was something that took me down, when we're talking about fear, took me straight into the valley of fear, of anxiety, of waking up every day thinking that I was going to have a heart attack, that was going to be the day that I was going to die. And we talk about like trauma and things that trigger us, but in 2019, I lost one of my very best friends, Giselle Best, to a sudden heart attack at the age of 43 years old. And that was my best friend over 20-something years. And so when that happened, it immediately triggered me and put me in a place of fear. And so the collection that is comprised to make up a piece of my heart is actually a collection of 50 of my positive affirmations, 50 notable quotes that focus on healing and self-love, and then 50 scriptures from the Bible that are accompanied with my reflections, but scriptures that deal with hope and guidance and like instruction and offering peace through our situations. And so when I was diagnosed, I literally ended up turning back to the words that I had put together for this book, like leaning on the words to kind of like help me through it. And of course, with, you know, my tribe of support and other scriptures from the Bible and prayer and all of those things. But I went back to these words, and it was like at that moment that God was like, now is the time for you to put out a piece of my heart. Wow. Like you thought it was in 2020, but it wasn't. Right. This is why it didn't come out then, because it was supposed to come out now. Right. And I realized that, like I said before, we all go through a journey in our lives where we need encouragement, where we need positive words. Just even when we're talking to ourselves. I spoke on a panel a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you know, we always talk about the way we want to be spoken to by other people, the way people talk to us, which is absolutely important. But one of the most important things that I've learned through my own journey is, how do I talk to myself?
Yes.
Right? What are the words that I speak to myself and into my life and over my situations? And I realize how powerful words are, because we know that they can tear down and break apart, but they also have the power to build up, to inspire, to motivate, and to encourage. And so I lean on those words, and then I felt that it was necessary to put the book out in the hopes that it will offer readers a peace of heart, a peace of mind, and so that's where that came from.
And a piece of your heart.
Yeah, and it's given a peace of mind.
Yes.
That's where that came from.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And, you know, I got to meet Giselle.
That's right.
And,
you guys
you know,
were on a panel together.
May she rest in peace, you know, an incredible soul. And, you know, it just also gets me to thinking about, you know, recently, you know, a lot of people near me have lost close ones. And, you know, just sending my love and my empathy and, you know, everything, because we have to take care of ourselves. Yes. You never know what's going to happen. So, you know, and we have to check up on our loved ones. Absolutely. We have to. Absolutely. It's so important, because we don't know what anyone's going through. But I don't want to get emotional and dive into that. But thank you. Thank you for sharing.
And
your
let me
journey.
just say too, managing stress, because I can even when I go to my cardiologist, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. When I go to my cardiologist, and of course there was a whole regimen and a whole lifestyle change, along with, you know, medication and exercising and how I'm eating and all of those things. But one of the top things he kept saying was, and you have to manage your stress, right? And then when we think about what we go through mentally, right? Anxiety, depression, like all of these things, you know, the trauma that we don't deal with, because I always say trauma not transformed is trauma transferred. So we can try to, you know, we can run from facing it and dealing with it, but it will follow us.
Absolutely.
From childhood, adolescence, into adulthood, you know, it will follow us. So I always like to share that message. Like, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to suffer in silence. It's not okay to hold those things in. We have to take a moment and be intentional and mindful about dealing with the things that we go through, because literally they will make us sick. And when I think back, I know that some of it was hereditary, but I know that a lot of it came from stress. So when we talk about it like a piece of your heart, it's like physically, spiritually, emotionally, like all of those things, the things that we hold on to impact our bodies, you know? And so that's just always a message to
absolutely
take care of yourself.
And you know, something that our sister and I share in common, which I was sharing with our lovely guest here earlier is that we are trying to focus on feminine reproductive health issues
Right.
because
Extremely
we've both experienced it, and I feel like that stress also can be a factor in that.
Absolutely.
So your book is based on affirmations. How do you believe positive affirmations can contribute to managing not only heart issues but also improving your mental well-being?
Oh my goodness. The benefits of affirmations are like endless. Like research studies prove this, right? Thinking and speaking positively. That's like when they even talk about like gratitude, right? Like speaking positive things, speaking them out loud, thinking them. Research shows that they, one, create a sense of calm. They ease the anxiety that you go through. They allow, when you have those thoughts in your mind, they get your body back to a normal state of calm and relaxation. So they're extremely beneficial, whether you say them out loud, whether you write them down. Some people put them on their mirror, some people put them by their bedside, by their refrigerator. But saying positive affirmations, if you can find something positive to think about and to ponder over, it is proven that it increases your well-being and your overall mental health, right? Because if whatever's going on in the world outside, we can't always control our environment, but we do have a choice to have control over what goes on the inside of us. So it's like what you're feeding to your spirit, right? So
Yeah.
if things are crazy and hectic and chaotic on the outside, but you have a regimen to speak positive
Yes.
thoughts over your situation and over what it's almost like it's kind of like you're tricking your body.
Right.
You're tricking your mind to believe that everything is okay, because that's what you're doing. You're affirming something that you need. It's not necessarily you're saying that this is how I feel right now, but you're affirming to the world and to the universe that this is what I need. And then when you speak it, the universe helps you.
Yeah.
You're like reprogramming your subconscious into thinking that.
And that's exactly what it does.
Right.
Exactly.
Into thinking
and
for-
then it creates
yeah.
and then it creates that space for you.
Right. And instead of having a negative thought about yourself initially, you're pouring positivity
There
right
you go.
away.
And we
into yourself.
teach
Yeah.
that throughout
Yeah.
Totality Wellness. We teach that to the youth, early childhood education.
Yes.
5 years old, 6 years old, we teach them about positive affirmations and speaking positive I am phrases. We teach them that from early so that they understand that they can control what they think and how
Right.
they feel. Because everything starts with your thoughts, right? So what you think impacts how you feel, and then how you feel in turn impacts and affects your behavior
Right.
and your actions. So if you can do your best to stay in a positive mindset, then that can impact
Yeah.
the outer world.
No, I agree. And I think a common theme also from today's conversations is how much time you're spending by yourself too.
Right.
Right. So we've spoken to about this with Troy earlier and with also Vina, just being able to spend time with yourself, and when you're spending time with yourself, pouring into yourself and pouring those positive affirmations within yourself, because I feel like our lives are so busy. We're always, especially, New York and larger cities, we're always get up and go, get up and go. I know I am. So that's why for me, like, solitude and being by myself is so important, because that's the time that I finally have to myself to sit with myself and think about everything that has gone on since I've been moving around all day. What has affected me? What do I need to change? I think that that's so important for us to do, because I think that's when all the negative things pop up about ourselves, because of the interactions we're having with coworkers, managers, bosses, in our businesses, whoever we encounter on the subway, in the street. I think that's what's making us sometimes feel hopeless just about our journey and life in general, So I think spending time with yourself is definitely very important, and then adding those positive affirmations when you're by yourself. Absolutely.
I totally agree. And I had to learn this myself. There's a difference between being lonely and spending time alone.
Right.
And I had to learn that, especially, as women, you go through, I feel lonely, whether you got out of a relationship, or you're not in one and you're looking to date, or you don't always maybe hang out and see your friends all the time. And so sometimes I know that can get a little bit lonely, but there's definitely a difference in learning to be okay with being in solitude.
Right.
Because like you said, that's when you have time to spend with yourself.
Right.
That's when you have time to really tap into your thoughts and really dig into, like, what you're feeling
Right.
without all of the
Or
outside
contamination from the
contamination
outside,
and the outside
yes.
noise. And I think sometimes people run from solitude because in solitude is where you really get an opportunity to self-reflect.
Right.
And honey, self-reflection is not always a pretty thing because
Right.
things
It's
arise and things come up. And I think a lot of people realize that during COVID. Because during COVID, and I'll speak
We
to
were
like the
forced.
men. During COVID is when a lot of men started reaching out to me. And when I say me, I mean like my nonprofit wanting to get referrals for therapy.
Right.
And I heard a lot of guys say like, yo, Steph, like being shut in the house because I'm so used to running and, hustling and grinding and, staying on the go. I had time to sit with myself and I was like, yo, man. Like, you got some shit that you, really need to deal with. Like, things were coming up. And they were like, yo, hold on. I might need to have a little bit of support. I might need some assistance. It's some stuff that I think I need help unpacking and navigating. And so I think sometimes that's why people are afraid to be alone. But I definitely want to share that when you get comfortable in solitude, and that's one of the affirmations in the book, I am my safe space. Because I think we look for safe spaces all out there. Now, don't get me wrong. I think we all are supposed to be able to create safe spaces. Like, this is a community.
tribe,
Sit fearlessly. Like, I feel safe here, unpacking, being transparent, sharing some of the things, that I've gone through. However, you can't create outer safe spaces until you learn to be your own safe space.
Right.
Because how are you able to give people and create a space for what people need if you don't even know what that looks like or feels like for yourself?
Right.
So that's one of the first things I learned with accepting and embracing solitude was that I was able to become my own safe space and then be able to give that to other people. But it had to start here
With
first.
you.
You can't
Exactly.
give what you don't know.
I love that so much. You can't create a safe space if you don't find a safe space within yourself. I think that was probably going to be one of the biggest takeaways with us today, because the problem is we're trying to create those safe spaces without doing the work within ourselves, right? So when we find these safe spaces, we're looking for them so that we're looking for a place where there's no judgment. However, we are bringing judgment into these spaces because we haven't worked on ourselves and we haven't found that safe space within ourselves. So we come into these tribes sometimes trying to influence people to understand where you're coming from instead of sharing for honest advice for growth and things like that, So I think that's where we're failing sometimes. And then we think to ourselves like, oh, that wasn't a safe space for me or whatever the case is. And it's like, no, maybe your approach to it was not the right approach because you haven't done the work within yourselves. Because tribes exist. I see them.
They do.
Amani's tribe. I see them.
Right.
Your tribe. I see them. Your tribe. Tribes exist. I think it's the way we're approaching them, just like we approach relationships, anything like that, workspaces, we have to make sure that we're doing the work within ourselves first.
Right.
To be able to approach these places the right way and then receive it.
Because if you don't, you'll be looking at it with your unhealed perspective.
Exactly.
You'll be looking at it with your traumatized lens on. And that's what trauma is. It's like you have on a pair of shades. You're not seeing things actually the way that they are. You're seeing them the way that what you have experienced and what you've been through.
See?
And
With your trauma glasses.
with your trauma glasses, and that shifts the perspective to what's really in front of you to be able to truly embrace.
Wow.
Exactly.
This right here is
Yes.
the reason why we met when we met. You understand? The trauma, the healing has to happen in order for us to connect as sisters. It's so crazy. Like, I got the goosebumps right now. I'm sorry, I cut you off, but it's so real. That message was so real because it's like you have to deal with things in your life in order for other things to come. And it's like I had to deal with a lot of things within myself, within where I came from, to be able to welcome my life with my sister and now have a life with my sister. Because the unhealed me would not accept that. Because it's like, she's not better than me, I'm not better than her. Like, it would have been totally different mindset, but it's so crazy stuff. Thank you. Like, you just assured me that what I went through is what I had to go through.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah. I
you.
mean, again, it's because we get influenced also
Right.
by
That's
other people around us and what they tell us. And sometimes we seek that. We seek validation. We seek for people to agree with us all the
Right.
time. And it's like, no, if you're wrong, you're wrong. And you have
Right.
to accept it. And it's not because somebody that's telling you maybe you should look at this from a different perspective thinks that they're right all the time. No, it's because they also take the time to do that as well. You know, so I definitely agree with you, sis. I
Right.
think, you know, our journey happened when it was supposed to, you know, and we have siblings and our siblings are going through their journey. And
Right.
when their time is right, you know, and we embrace it and accept it and respect it. And we still all love each other, whether it's close or from afar.
Right.
But I think it definitely takes time to get to that place.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you guys can end up being a blueprint for your other siblings as they try and navigate that and be
Right.
able to
So
see.
that's what
and-
we're trying
you know
to
what
do.
I'm saying?
We're
So-
trying to be the example.
Exactly.
Even though I feel like we're amplified. We're like twins right now. We're like sisters in power.
That's right.
It's like, no, those two were meant to be. Forget
Right.
that.
That's right. I love it.
But it's a beautiful
It's a
thing.
Yes, it is.
You know, I know they're like, we'll do it our own way.
I know.
I'm
Well, I
gonna
needed
let y'all have that.
because the one thing I wanted was to become a mom. And after our relationship happened, that trip we took to DR and everything, I came back pregnant.
Yes.
So I became a
Yes.
mom.
And
so
I
that's
knew she was,
something,
too.
You know, so it's like things needed to be closed.
Yeah.
Doors needed to heal in order for me to move forward with my life. And look where we
Yeah.
are now. So
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's
Yes.
crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
I always tell people the work is hard. I say I give the example. I said when you think about like architects or like construction sites and when they're building things, I said it's a mess. It's dirty. It's
Yes.
filthy. It's dusty.
Yes.
It's wood planks. Things are like all over the place. But once the building is done and all of that groundwork and that hard work is done, then you have something beautiful, a
Right.
beautiful
Exactly.
skyscraper.
And
new
it's different
beautiful-
levels.
And it's different levels. I was like, so it's hard, dirty work, that healing journey. But what's on the other side of it is beautiful. It's like the caterpillar
is.
that goes into the cocoon.
Right.
But then they come out and they're all beautiful. So you got to go
That's
through
why I
the
love
dark
butterflies.
to get to. Me too.
Yeah.
That's gonna be my next
love it.
tattoo,
Butterflies.
actually.
Yeah.
You got to go through the dark. to,
Listen,
you know,
I
get
think
to
that
the
we
light.
are all beautiful skyscrapers
That's
Yes.
right.
because we've all endured a lot. And, you know, look at
Absolutely.
how far we've come. I know a lot of times we sit and we're like, oh, but we want to do more. But it's coming. But we have
Right.
done so much.
Right.
There's so much work that we've done. And that's why, you know, we're able to have these conversations and sit together and share this type of energy, you know, with all these beautiful women, you know, that are here. So, yeah, I love it. But I want you to share some of the affirmations in your book, some specific affirmations that have helped you and have been beneficial in your journey.
Okay, so I'll tell you one of the first ones. The first one that's in here that I love is I am healing in my totality, mind, body, and spirit. That's one of my favorite ones. Another one is I will nurture my relationships by establishing healthy boundaries.
I love that.
I want to dive into that.
That is another one of
That's
mine.
for all Libras out there.
I think, listen, no, that's for all signs.
Yes,
Actually,
yes.
out there. That's one of my favorites.
Yes.
Okay.
So you know what? Let's dive into that a little bit. Let's talk about boundaries. Let's talk about, let's unpack it a little bit as much as we can. Let's talk about creating those boundaries. How do we get to the point where we understand it and we understand that we need to start creating those boundaries because a lot of it is affecting us.
Well, I will say this because, you know, I'm always going to go to the space of mental health.
Right.
I think that a lot of people are afraid to create boundaries because of the trauma that they've gone through. I think some people they want to overly please, right? When you experience certain trauma, you have people that you have people that over apologize, right? Or just want to say yes all the time because they don't want to disappoint, or they're afraid how their no may impact a relationship or impact someone else. And I'm speaking from a personal place, and then I realized that, like, I'm driving myself nuts by not establishing boundaries. I'm not speaking up when I feel like I know I should be, right? I'm not saying no because I want to say yes because I want to make everyone happy and I want to be able to show up for everyone. And I remember somebody said to me, well, Stephanie, when you say yes to everything, realize that you're saying no to some things that are affecting you.
Right.
So you're saying yes to a bunch of stuff, but realize that when you do that, you're also saying no to some things that you really need to think twice about, right? And I think once you get to the point where you want to prioritize your well-being, and you realize that by doing that, you have to create boundaries and healthy boundaries that are beneficial to you and the other person, right? Because I believe in reciprocity. It's a give and take thing, right? And I think when you get to that point, you realize, okay, so it's okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to say that sounds great, but it's not necessarily for me, right? This is not fitting for me right now. Maybe this is something we can circle back with later. But that, again, I think that comes with healing and understanding, like, again, it's that self-reflection. Like, why is it that I feel so bad when I get ready to say no? Right? Why is it that I feel like I have to say yes to everything? Why is it that I know that what someone just said or did didn't make me feel good, but then I didn't want to speak up and say something about it? And I think that goes back again to when you're doing the work. Because when you're doing the work on yourself, it's like those little things that trigger you. I always tell people when they hear the word trigger, some people get, oh, it's all, it's a bad thing, it's a bad thing. And I don't always agree with that, because what I believe is that when we are triggered by things, if we pay attention to them, it allows us to see the spaces and places that we just still need a little bit more work on.
Absolutely.
There needs to be a little bit more healing done in those spaces.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're being triggered. Instead of, getting so offended,
right.
let's take a look at why did that upset me so much, right?
Exactly.
Why did that hurt my feelings so much? Not to say that the person that said it or did it is not wrong. I'm not saying that. But again, it's more about, because somebody else is going to come along and say something one day that may hurt your feelings and that you may not agree with either. And again, we're not saying that those things are right and there should be healthy ways to speak up and address those things. But the bigger picture for me, when we're talking about creating boundaries, is first to understand why these things are impacting you the way that they are, and then work on that. And when you do that, then you are more confident and more able to create those boundaries and in a healthy way and not feel bad about them. Because that's when you know it's a healthy thing. Like I don't feel upset that I just expressed to you my feelings, but like I can walk away feeling good and then confident that the way that I expressed it, you feel good as well. It's reciprocated and respected, and we can both continue on and still build this healthy relationship. And if that does not happen, then maybe that's not the relationship for you.
Exactly.
And guess what? That's okay too.
So I actually want to weigh in on that, right? So I have been the person for a very long time who hasn't really spoke up about things that bothered me because I don't like confrontation. Because I find myself to be a kind person, a respectful person, but I have my triggers. And when I get triggered, it can get ugly, just like anyone. And I don't want to project my triggers onto anyone. So I try to avoid confrontation. And instead of speaking up and saying things that bother me, I have kept them in for a very long time until now.
Right, because that's not good.
The inverse of creating boundaries and knowing, understanding what triggers you, I would say that the people sometimes that you're creating boundaries against don't receive it well. They don't receive it well, and it causes confrontation sometimes. And sometimes they don't understand why you're creating this boundary. They don't understand when you approach them and you say, look, I think we need to take a pause on some things and figure out what is going on here, what's going wrong. Let's sit down and talk about it before we can proceed with any type of anything. Whether it's business, a relationship, a friendship, whatever it is. We need to sit down and figure out what's going on, right? And instead of, these people accepting that and not accepting it, but understanding it and trying to figure out where it's coming from, instead of being triggered right away and taking it as an insult or things like that, that's how they're taking it. They're responding in a negative way.
They still need some healing.
Absolutely.
They don't understand.
Right. Absolutely. But what I'm saying is, this is why sometimes it is hard for, people like us who are empathetic and things like that, who don't want to get into conflict, speaking up for ourselves and
Right.
putting our foot down and saying, no, this is not happening. I mean, in our grown age, we're doing that now, that's not happening no more. But
I'll just
yes,
avoid it.
yes, don't come. Not at this point in my life. Maybe back then.
Right.
But yeah, and I think that we need to look at it from both ways, and I think that everyone needs to take accountability. I think those who haven't stood up for themselves in the past or now need to start creating those boundaries, those healthy boundaries for themselves. And those who are being triggered by people creating boundaries and making decisions and saying, this is not for me. I love you, but together it's not okay. And again, this is not only relationship, friendship, family members, work, your boss, things like that. You have to be able to make that decision. And as the person who's receiving that message, you need to sit down and think like, okay, why didn't this work out?
Right.
Why is this person not wanting to continue? What happened here? Let's unpack it. Yeah. Instead of just, being triggered right away and jump into a negative conclusion.
Yeah, I like that. I opened this to one of the quotes, and I'll just read it real quick because it's about triggers. So it says, avoiding your triggers isn't healing. Healing happens when you're triggered and you're able to move through the pain, the pattern, and the story and walk your way to... and walk your way to a different ending. Yeah.
That's touching.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we don't have much time left.
We got 3 minutes.
But I do want you to talk a little bit about the work that you do with our youth, which is very important, and mental health centered around it. I think that our youth right now are going through a very challenging time because of social media, because of, all of the crime that's happening in our communities and things like that. And, just not having like a good solid foundation at home and, just all those things that are happening right now. So talk to us a little bit about that and your contribution.
First, I'm always going to go to sharing the information because for me, it's always about inform, educate, empower. So suicide is currently the second leading cause of death for Black youth ages 10 to 14, and the third leading cause of death for Black youth ages 15 to 19 years old. And mental health issues are on the rise in New York City and across the country for youth ages 6 to 17 years old. There is a current crisis in our city as far as mental health and the youth experiencing high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, high levels of suicide ideation. And so the work that we do with Totality Wellness, so a lot of people don't know that before I got into the music industry, I was an educator. So I did speech therapy in the Board of Education for 6 years. I also taught second grade in the Board of Education as well as in charter schools. So when I started doing the work in our communities and mental health, working with our women, of course, their mothers. And so creating safe spaces and programming and workshops for them around mental health and trauma-informed care, they started unpacking a lot of the fact that their children were also dealing with high levels of depression and anxiety, and they were really having trouble even starting the conversation in the homes with tapping into wanting to know how their children are feeling and how they could help them. And so we started creating mental health and wellness programs and utilizing holistic approaches like we do, again, positive affirmations. We do yoga, meditation. We use art as a non-clinical form of therapy and healing with the children. We have programs like The Mind of a Superhero, which focuses on like positive self-talk, anti-bullying. It's like a youth suicide prevention program. So we have created these spaces to teach children at a very early age, like we spoke about, from early childhood education, understanding that they have the control. We call it like the power. We teach them about their superpower, and it's called the power of the mind. And so we let them know from young to understand, one, their bodies and the emotions that they're feeling, right? The headaches, the butterflies, the nervousness, when their hands start sweating, when their heart starts beating fast, to identify these feelings and these emotions, to be able to label them and put a name on them, because first they have to understand them, identify them, understand them, and then they're able to take control over them. So we believe in teaching them about tools to manage their stress from early on, to empower them. on how to take control of how they feel, about the thoughts that are in their heads, right? Teaching them that these emotions are like waves. They come and they go, right? So they don't get caught up in the wave and think that this is a space that they'll never be able to get out of, because that's where the sense of hopelessness sets in. And then that's where things like the suicide and all of those things take place. So we just really try to empower and educate and equip our youth and offer them resources of support throughout our communities, as well as going into the school system and doing these programs in the schools, and also working to educate the educators, because the teachers went to school and learned about academics and teaching that to children. But I always say you cannot teach kids academically if you are not making sure that their social, emotional well-being and needs are met first. And so that's where we start, and try to support the families as well.
Well, that's so important. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And I see that a lot, a lot of us in the network, work with the youth, and I see that a lot. And I see teachers struggling with the students because they have, all of this energy and, ADHD, and they can't concentrate. And, sometimes if you take, and I know it's a lot for them because it is a lot of students that they have, but sometimes if you take out that trouble student and talk to them in a way where they feel respected, you can get more out of it. And it's not to say that you teachers are doing a bad job. That's not what I'm saying at all, because I actually respect teachers a lot, because to be an educator is not easy. And I commend you for doing that every single day. But I know when I'm in the schools, and I pull out that one, child, whether it's a young lady or a young man that gave me trouble that day, and I talk to them, the way that I talk to them makes them open up so much to me. And yeah, I even had one young lady tell me, you know what it is, miss? I have ADHD. I can't keep still. But also, if I'm not being respected when I'm being talked to, then I'm not gonna receive it. I'm gonna feel disrespected. So I think just taking out the time to understand where they're coming from, and it's not to say to allow them to disrespect you, because no, but just taking out the time to talk to them, because it is hard. I feel like they're in school every day. This is their environment. This is their second home.
Right.
And it should feel safe.
They should feel
like it's
safe.
a second home. And you said something so important. I know we have to wrap up. When I did a trauma-informed care training with educators, and I said to them, I said, even the way that you approach a child makes all the difference. I said, because instead of saying, what's wrong with you, you should be asking, what happened to you? That makes a difference right there. What's wrong with you automatically makes them think that they did something wrong, that they are the problem. But when you say to them, let me talk to you, come over here. What happened? What's going on? What happened to you? That automatically makes them feel like somebody cares about what they went through and what they experienced, because 9 times out of 10, something has happened to that child that is making them behave that way. So, that's so important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sitting with us.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Gigi. Thank you, everybody. And before we go, this book, A Piece of My Heart, is available right now on Amazon. If you want to go and purchase your copy, A Piece of My Heart by Stephanie Carnegie. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Y'all, definitely tap in and grab a copy. Very important. Thank you. That was another episode of Sit Fearlessly.
Yes.